Hello, and welcome to our Adult and Teen Book Nook Kit demo.
My name is Robin, and I'm a teen librarian at the Brookline Village Library.
I'm here today to show you how to make your own book nook to put on your bookshelf.
Is this your first Public Library of Brookline to Go program? Here's how it works. Each month, the library is offering new take-home program kits, complete with everything you need to follow along and video or written instructions created by one of your local librarians. The best part? Absolutely no due dates. You can keep everything included in your kit. Visit brklib.com to go for a full list of our current kit offerings, and follow the link to find out about all of our kits, free to pick up at any library location.
For this kit, many of them involve cutouts of wooden pieces, so just be careful that there may be some rough edges and there's a potential for splinters, so handle with care and make sure that you're checking the edges of pieces and sand them down if you need to. For the first section of this, you just want to check over the fact that you have all of the pieces that you need. You can see in these videos that I've laid out each set of pieces according to which wall of the book nook they make. And you should also have a printout that goes through and lists all the pieces with names and numbers that'll help you make sure you have all the pieces. If for any reason you don't have all the pieces, contact the library. You can either chat us or call us, and we can always make sure to cut out an extra piece if there's anything that's missing. We have a way to do that. So just make sure to go through that before you even start building the kit to make sure that you have all the pieces you need so you won't get frustrated during the making of the book nook. The other thing is you'll have two separate front pieces. They're the trees and the bricks here, and you can use either one, but you won't use both, so you can decide which ones you want to use. For the rest of the kit, we'll have a gel stain that basically comes out as black, a sequence of paints that are different colors that you can mix and use however you like, some very strong glue that will help you put the pieces together, some polymer clay options, some glue, and it basically creates a gloss, so you can have a glass coating. There's also some little miniatures like a miniature owl, a little wooden milk can, and some miniature flower pots that you can use. We'll also give you a brush, and this is more of a detail brush, and then also a few strings of LED lights and a paint palette so you can mix colors however you'd like. We'll also give you some extra pieces so that you can add them on if you want to get creative about extra decoration in your kit. You'll also get some sheets of vellum, and as you can see, there's a pattern for the vellum that will let you put it on the back of the wooden walls, and that just gives a little bit of shading to the windows and doors that are part of your nook. So you can trace the pattern through the vellum. It's translucent, and then just you want to cut out the pieces so that you'll have them ready for when you need them. So as you can see, they go onto the back side of a wall, and you'll be able to see different parts. And then if you'd like to, you can mark where the windows are with a pencil, where the vellum is kind of overlapping, so that you'll get a sense of where you might want to put something that you would see through the window, or if you want to color in any part of the vellum, you can. So in this case, I decided to make a little silhouette of a figure that will be looking through that top window. And I just cut it out with some black paper, figured out where it would go in the window and where I should place it so that it looks good in the frame. And then you just glue it down so that it'll go on the back of the vellum, so that it'll kind of look like you're looking through the window, and it gives it a little bit more of a mysterious look if you go through the back like that. Two of the other items included in your kit are small acrylic windows that are optional. You can add them to the specific walls shown here, either the brick wall or what will be the balcony wall. And they just add a little bit of extra flair to that window, and they've each got a little engraving, one of a little comet and one of a book. And to add them in, you'll want to glue along the longer edge on one side and just secure them so that they're flat with the wall. So the first thing you'll want to do is consider all your pieces. You might want to start putting them together a little bit to figure out where you might want to paint. And you can get very creative about the colors you use, but you want to make sure that you paint the edges that will be visible on the outside. So you might want to paint a few different edges and make sure that they match. And just pay attention as you're painting as to where they'll overlap and where you might see the colors. Now you can get very creative about the different color schemes that you want to use. These are all made with the paint pots that we gave you, so you can do all sorts of colors. It's just up to you. In terms of painting all the pieces, you can choose all sorts of colors that you want. In this case, I'm painting the top edges of the walls, so they'll each match the different color schemes that I chose for each wall. And it's important to just make sure to pay attention, as I said, keep putting pieces together, even if they're not painted yet, just to think about where you need to paint. If you need to paint an edge as well as the flat part of the wooden piece, that'll help you know what exactly you want it to look like. You can always go in after you've put it together as well, but it can be useful to paint it ahead of time so there aren't any gaps in the colors once you've glued things in. And of course, these are little topiary plants that will go into the base. And you can get a little more creative with that in the sense that you can paint your own little bushes and add all sorts of colors. And if you want to see, this is the stain. So this is a little different than the paint in that it's not as opaque. You can actually rub it off with a cloth and it'll be a little more translucent and the grain of the wood will show through. So we give you that mainly because there's a significant amount of that and that'll make a good base color. But if you want to make different colors, you have enough paint to do that as well. And in this case, you can see that I'm adding some details to the plants and making some shadows. So for each of the different walls, I've chosen a different color scheme. You can see this one is a combination of black and a light blue and gold. And then the next wall is more kind of woodsy theming. It's browns and golds and green. And I put a few little decorative dots along some of the wooden pieces so that you can see there's a little bit of detail that I did here. And then the final one was a brick wall, so I decided to go with the traditional sort of red setup. But I also added in some different colors of bricks to make it a little varied on the brick wall, and chose the red and kind of black as the main scheme here. You can obviously choose whatever you want. Now the little tub of gloss that we gave you is a gloss. It also can be used as a glue, but it's mainly to give a little bit of shine. So if you would like your walls or your pavement to shine a little bit, then you can use this and it will dry clear. In this case, I decided for the bottom of the Book Nook, I wanted to have some cobblestones that looked like they were a little bit wet. So I painted them first and then let it dry. And then I added the gloss on top, and you can see it makes a little bit of a shine so that it looks a little different from the rest of the pieces. Another way to add it in is to do it on top of some particular parts. So in this case, I added it to the leaves on the trees to make them a little glossier. And then you can see for the final bits of pieces, I did some different top colors as well as the cobblestones and the arches. Now the first thing you're going to put together is the balcony. And in this case, you use the little tube of the very strong E6000 glue. You only need a very little bit of this glue. It's very strong once it dries. And it is clear. But the main thing is to make sure you're putting it on the edges that are actually going to connect, and that should be the firmest. So you want to look for the longer strips of wood that will attach and make sure that you place it firmly and let it dry for a little bit. The glue does dry pretty quickly, so you can add pieces together, and it will stay flexible also a little bit if you need it to while you're putting the pieces together. But once it dries, it's pretty solid. And in this case, you want, as I said, you want to do the edges. You want to see where it's going to fit together and make sure you put the glue along those edges. This balcony is a good kind of first thing to make because it's pretty simple to put together. It's a square, and you've got a lot of pieces to look at in terms of what you want to put where. And that's it complete. Now the next thing you'll build will be the steps that go at the bottom of this particular wall. So these are just going to stack so that there's the flat edge on the back, and you may put the glue on those little different pieces, and you'll be able to move it around a little bit to make sure they align along that back edge, but you just want to make sure they're flat. And then the first wall that you're going to build is the back wall, which is where the balcony is set up. So you start with the steps first, and you just run some glue along that flat edge that you've created and attach it to the bottom and make sure that's kind of firmly in place for the solid bottom of the wall. Then you're going to want to put the door on top of that. Just make sure it's centered so that you see through the window, and you'll have a nice setup there. And for all of this, you only need a little bit of glue. You don't need to use a ton. This one little tube of glue should get you through the whole project. So just be careful with it and you should be fine. Then you're going to want to put the balcony on top, so that will cover over the steps and the door. And you just make sure that that's firmly attached to the back wall. Then you're going to add the roof, and each of these have a specific slot that they go into, and you can tell by the little tabs which size you're supposed to put where. So you may need to build it a little bit first before you add the glue, but once you add the glue, then you can build the roof that's got the 2 points for the balcony. Now the final things you'll need to attach for these walls are the edges and the top. So in this case, this is the top edge, and you can see I've painted it blue to match relatively well. And you just want to keep that so that it makes a right angle, as you can see there. And then you'll just let that dry. And then for the next wall, you're going to want to put the doorknob, which is a very small piece, into the door. This door will actually open, so you'll be able to move it back and forth. As you can see, there's a little hole that the hinge will fit into. So first you want to attach that top and bottom, and make sure you're adding the door at the same time so that you can make sure that it will still hinge and open and close correctly. You don't want to glue the door, so make sure you don't add glue to where the hinge would be. And then you're going to want to add the edges of the door, which is almost like a little grate, and add that along the longer edges. And then finally the top, which makes a little roof over the door. And once again, you've got the green matching the top to make that top edge, to make sure that it will stay on the top and look consistent. And you can always go back and paint things along the edges there if you've missed some spots, or you can leave them. It depends on what you think looks best. Now, some of the harder pieces to attach are the longer edge pieces. This will be the wall that faces out from the bookshelf, so you want it to be there just to create a little bit of an illusion of the edge of the building. But these can also be harder to attach because the walls may be a little bit warped, or the piece may be a little bit warped, and I'll show you how to deal with that if that comes up. Now the right wall is one where we did have that issue. As you can see, I wanted to attach the longer edge, the side of the building, but the actual wall had gotten a little warped from both painting, and just generally the wood was a little warped when we cut it. So if you have this happen, if there's something you want to do, there is a way to fix it, especially if you're going on a long edge like this. I just used this big cup of water to hold it flat so that the edge itself was still flat, and glued it while it was flattened by the weight, and that will make sure that the seal will stay and that the glue will hold it together. You do want to leave it there until it's absolutely dry, so don't try to take the weight off until you're finished. But that will eventually go together. Even if there's a little bit of a warp in the wood, once you put the final kit together, it will stay together and it will make the box. The wood itself is flexible enough to handle that. So the next part is to add the decorative arches, and this is another stack like you did with the steps. So you just add them on in ascending order and add them onto the overarching windows and the door. Then you'll want to add the bottom step, give that a more horizontal support. Then you add the door. And make sure you firmly press everything down and give it time to dry. And then in this case, these are barred windows, so they have little bars. There are 8 of them that you attach just through those little tiny holes that are above and below each window. And you can add all 8 of them there. If you just put a little bit on each end, it should stay. And again, just make sure to give it time to dry. And then this is the top edge of the brick building. In this case, it's a little brown to give it a little bit of variation instead of immediately matching the red. And then as you can see, that side piece, since I allowed it to dry, has now stuck to where it should be and has helped to flatten the whole wall a little bit. So now you want to start attaching the walls to the base. And first you just start with the little topiary bushes that we painted before. That just adds a little bit of depth to the back. And those just have a little tiny tab that you can glue in. Then you'll want to take the left wall and add the arches. And you want to do this first so that you'll have enough wiggle room to attach all the different walls to the base and still have the arches attached. You won't be able to put them in after because you'll lose the space at the top to be able to piece it all together. And then I would start with the edge, the longer edge, as well as the bottom. You're going to need to attach both at the same time. The glue doesn't dry so fast that you wouldn't be able to do that. So just make sure that you've put glue in all the places you should in order to attach it together. And in this case, I did the left and the back at the same time and then kind of smoosh it all together to make sure that it's slotted into the correct slots and that it will all hold together. And as you can see, the arches are now reaching over to the right. And the right wall is the last one to attach. That gets a little tricky because you need to make sure to get all the arches in the correct slots as well as everything lined up on the bottom and the side. But you can do it. It just takes a little work. And then the other thing to remember is that if you want to give it a little more chance to stay together and create the box that you want to be solid, I would do this, which is just take some rubber bands and wrap it around the entire structure to let it dry so that it forms a square. And make sure that everything is in its correct place while it's drying so that nothing will slightly tip or pull out of any of the notches that it's supposed to have. I used about 2 or 3 different rubber bands to make sure that it's all set and that it will stay together. Now the next part, you're going to want to add the windows. And in this case, you'll take the vellum that you've already cut and then decorate it a little bit and add the glue in spots where you can't see it through the glue. You can also, as you can see here, color in to make sure a different window have a different color scheme. So that's the door. I made it into a blue door to give it a little bit of difference. And I found that's easiest to do once you've attached the vellum so that you can actually see where you're drawing. And for the rest of these, we just glued them down and we didn't bother to do any more color, but you can do whatever you'd like. And as you can see, this is what the vellum looks like once you've attached it. Now for the lights, you're going to want to attach it so that it goes through this little notch at the top of the back. You want the switch to come out the back so that you'll be able to turn on and off the lights as you'd like. So you mark where that little notch is on the back so you know where to put the lights. And you'll have 2 separate LED light strings, and you just want to untangle it so that you have one extended wire. And you'll see each little light bulb is attached to the wire, and then there's the one switch at the top. So you can see that's where we marked where the notch will be at the back. So I would start there just to make sure that the wire is all set. And you can use a clear tape like Scotch tape to just attach the wires where you want them. And when you're adding the lights to the kit, we found that putting the lights in between the windows rather than right on top of them means that the glow is more diffuse and shows through different windows rather than being a bright spot in the middle of a window. So I try to maneuver it so that the lights are in different places. And with the switch, you can see you turn it on, you pull out the little plastic tab, and you can switch it on with the little black switch and see what it looks like through the windows. And I would do this just to double check your placement, and if you want to move any of them around, you'll be able to do that before you close them behind the walls. And then you can use the second string through that same notch. They should both be able to fit there without too much trouble. And then go to the different places that you want to have lights appear. And you can be specific about having only one side lit up or particular windows or doors. It's up to you. And you can also coil them so that they come through a particular spot. And in this case, I wanted to make sure that it lit up the blue window that we had through that one door. So you can see that little notch to the side is also a way to make sure that the wires come through and won't be cut off by the outside walls of the Nook. So you'll want to look for those little notches to make sure that you're running the wires through there rather than over the edge of the back. And there you can see there are all the lights added in different spots. Now, once you've got all the wires and lights attached, then you're going to want to attach the back. Now you can see I didn't paint this back because I didn't worry about what it was going to look like. You can always paint all the pieces, it's up to you. But you mainly want to make sure that it will solidly attach to the back and that the wires will be kept in place without cutting off the wires themselves. And just like all the other parts, you just use the glue to attach it. And then you want to attach the sides as well and make sure that they all match the side they're supposed to be. Both sides are the same cut of wood. They just have a different orientation of how they attach. And you can see there's another little warped piece of wood there. And by using the glue and using the rubber bands like we did the last time, you'll be able to make sure that the Nook creates a square. And just make sure that you let it dry again all the way. So the final piece you want to add is the front pieces. Now these are either the bricks or the trees. In this case, I am adding the trees onto the front. And they're cut so that they will fit exactly there and they won't interfere in terms of the branches and leaves with each other. So for the final touch on the top of the Book Nook, you'll see there's the little angled pieces on top of the arches that will let you add the roof tiles to each side. And this gives the impression of a roof on each building. And then finally, we've added in a few little miniature pieces so that you can be a little creative and add something extra to your Book Nook however you want. In this case, I was adding a few potted plants to our walkway, and then I decided to make a little bush, and you can see that I painted the pots gold, and then I used the polymer clay to make a little round shrub here. I used the end of the paintbrush to give it a little bit more of a shrub-like texture. And then for the other plant, I decided to make a few more tendrils of clay to give it more of a spaghetti look almost to the plant. The idea that there were lots of different leaves and that they curled in on each other, so you can see that you can do that. And you can get creative with all the clay. You can blend the clay, you can do all different kinds of types of plants. It's whatever you'd like. You can also do something completely different. So it's up to you. You could put a little cat hiding in a pot, or just make a little cat. Whatever you might like to work. And then once you've got your plants all set up, you just want to bake it at 270 degrees Fahrenheit for around 15 minutes for 1/4 inch. So these little plants cooked for about a half an hour, so they're a little bit thicker to make sure they were solidly. And then once they were hardened, I glued them into the pots to make sure they would stay. And then I just wanted to add them towards the front, so I chose a door and added each with a little bit of glue to the front of the entryway. And then we had that little owl bead that I gave everyone, so you can pick where you'd like to put your owl. I decided to put the owl in between the two roofs on the top of the balcony, and I just used a little glue on the back to position the owl to make sure that it would stay. And And as you can see, this is the complete Book Nook that we've created. And there's all different kinds of colors and things that you can see, and the little owl at the top. So there's a lot of different possibilities here. It all depends on your imagination and the different colors you decide to use, and what you might like to paint, what you might like to build. You can very much make it your own. And here's a little view of what it looks like in the dark, if you just want to see what the lights look like with the lights turned off. And this is more in a kind of lower light, so you can see the lights. And here it is on an actual bookshelf, in this case our new teen book section. So you can see what it's supposed to look like and what a little adventure it adds to your bookshelf. I hope you enjoy making this as much as we did. This Book Nook pattern was designed by TimberlandCNC, and we appreciate their work in making it for all of us to enjoy. Thank you all so much for making with us today.
We would love to see what you made with your kit, so please feel free to share your project with us on social media using the hashtag BRKLIB2Go. The Tween and Teen Kit program is generously sponsored by the Library Trustees and the Friends of the Brookline Public Library.